This is a reply from a few of us who are neither Republicans nor Democrats to the pronouncements on the first day of the session in Connecticut. That was February 9th. I and others are seeking office. All constitutional offices are in play this year, and it's not necessarily a one versus the other. There are other parties out there, and we hope that you who are seeing this take a look. Mr. Lamont praised the condition of Connecticut's finances, and he has some right to do that. Please remember that government finances are robust only because money with the government has been kept from you. That's how government gets its direct funding. Mr. Stefanowski's posts so far, and 4 years ago, have been on the financial end as well. He seems to know finance. We don't begrudge that. But we should all begrudge a focus on finance at the expense of truly dire problems. Bob has neglected the lack of choice that has plagued Connecticut citizens, and that's not just the last 2 years. It's been that way for decades. In 2018, two of us ran against both Bob and Ned, primarily on social issues as well. Voters noticed, but few in the media did. Maybe they will now. It's why so many parents, not finance, despite higher costs, it's why social issues do drive us. It's why so many parents do spend money on private schools. It's why many of us pay for VPNs. Privacy more important than saving a few bucks. Saving money pales in comparison to preserving freedom and choice. At least when we are fairly well off, we can and should afford to put money into choices and forego perhaps some things, monetary ones, in favor of freedom. Let's get back to core values. Frankly, I don't think that such values have ever departed from nutmeggers. Where have they gone with legislators? That's the big problem. They've departed, particularly from legislative leaders that are Democrats. On specific policies, our governor has not been as bad as those in other states. But he's become part of a protective cabal of Democrats who reinforce one another, who don't criticize even the far most leftist policies that come from members of their party. Leftists who truly want to destroy America. And the Republican leaders, they don't stand strongly enough. The average Connecticut citizen, we contend, is a normal American. One who doesn't want authoritarian takeovers, doesn't want government running schools, doesn't want government closing down businesses, firing workers, restricting our travel, messing with our health care. The worst Democrat leaders are not normal. They are, by this definition, un-American. It doesn't mean unpatriotic. It means they've jettisoned American values. We who still hold these values should be asserting them. That regards policies for the legislative session that's coming up, and it regards the next elections. Let us close by tying in Governor Lamont and Mr. Stefanowski and lack of freedom. Finances do matter. But let's go back to why Connecticut and America are still relatively well off. It's because we have freedom. Our good finances have been built because of the choices Americans still have to earn money for themselves and our communities. It's not government that builds wealth. Democrats need to remember that. It's freedom of labor. It's freedom of transit. It's freedom of ideas. It's freedom of gatherings. Government takes wealth, or at its best, very best, redistributes it, and usually unfairly, and of late, to those in power, friends with those in authority. The last 2 years have witnessed the largest transfer of wealth from poor to rich in human history. And this reverse Robin Hood has been carried out by government. This wasn't economic free market forces. Those in power have expanded their power. They have even more friends, even more donors looking to tie their corporate interests with the government's policies. Who's on the outs? Every consumer, who's then paying more for corporate wealth and who is getting their rights restricted. King George, George III, ruler over the colonists in the 1760s and 70s, he never had power like our most recent presidents do. The most oppressive parliaments of that era never had control over our freedoms like the current crop of imposing governors and the legislatures that have enabled their commands. At the federal level, anyway, our governance now is closer to Stalin than to Jefferson. So we need to remind our current legislators and governors that impositions breed bad finances. Seemingly small things like whether we're allowed to gather for Sunday prayers, whether high school girls should be forced to compete against boys, or whether even younger girls should be forced to have males leer at them in their school locker rooms. These all curtail freedom. And once that goes, there's nothing that Ned Lamont's finances or Mr. Stefanowski's financial solutions can do to save us. We should return control now to people as individuals, because individual decisions make better decisions. Democrats don't recognize this. Republicans don't recognize it enough. Let's have individuals stand up for ourselves.